Namaste, everybody. In school, we learn about economics as the study of how to measure the exchange of goods and services. We're taught that economic prosperity is the key to having a lucrative career and a functioning society. Namely, we, both as people and as citizens of our country, place a strong emphasis on the concept of earning and spending money. Money is supposed to be the driving force behind everything, including resource allocation, social mobility, and favorable heredity. However, this single-tracked perspective regarding how the economy affects quality of life is limited. Within the Sanatana Dharma lies a more nuanced view of individual prosperity in the larger context of an economy. Ancient Hindu seers understood that money can only be one part of prosperity, and this understanding manifested itself into Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati being the necessary components of wealth. I will be attempting to explain how these three divine entities fit within a multifaceted definition of wealth, as well as to connect their presence to potentially solve societal problems. Similarly to those in ancient India, most people in the Leelas and Puranas were farmers and self-sufficient communities. This is seen in the Krishna Leelas when Nanda tells Krishna that Indra is worshipped because the rain he provides sustainability for the grass. The grass gives the cows a proper food supply, and the cows give the citizens resources to survive. Money does exist in the Leelas, as shown by Krishna needing it to buy fruit. However, it is only a means of obtaining wants, while farming itself is what provides the needs. So, desire and survival are based on different mechanisms, which lessens the importance of money. This principle can be seen when Krishna grants a boon to Sudama due to his demonstration of devotion. For asking to have compassion, Sudama is given wealth, showing once more that money should be for our wants, not our needs. Devotion in the name of money is insincere, as taught to us by Swami Prabhupada, so there must be those in the Leelas and Puranas who exemplify the corrupt nature of money. One of those people is Kamsa, as because he wanted to maintain his wealth, he tortured Devaki and Vasudeva. Also, Prabhupada-ji teaches that money given to beggars ought to be given cautiously, because even those who want desperately to live with their money can be corrupted by its ability to simultaneously grant wants. In the Ramayana, Sugriva, king of Kishkinta, was supposed to go to Malyavan mountain in order to help Rama and Lakshmana look for Sita. When he did not come, Lakshmana went back to Kishkinta only to find that Sugriva had forgotten to come because he was fawning over his newfound wealth. Money, when sought after or used excessively, can actually make someone less fulfilled, as the corruption it incurs makes an individual less altruistic and more selfish. Class and power are often intertwined, as those who occupy a higher socioeconomic status usually have more influence on public affairs. Durga, a symbol of power according to the Vedas, can also be seen as the goddess of class. In the slogan, Om Sarvabhada Vinirmukto Dhan Dhanya Suthanvita Manshuyo Mat Prasadhan Bhaviyashti Na Sanshaya Om. Translated, Om, may we be released from all miseries in life and gain riches, wealth, and prosperity, and tread the righteous path free from doubts. A devotee chants for gaining riches, wealth, and prosperity. This path that a devotee would take is what economists would call social mobility, and it is in praying to Durga that one might achieve such mobility. Thus, the wealth that Durga represents is camaraderie and respect, which is shown in this shloka to be positively correlated with climbing our social hierarchies. Durga herself is a feminine symbol of equality. During Durga Puja in 2020, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi asserted as such. The socioeconomic divide between men and women is caused by a lack of respect given to women by men. Durga is a feminine goddess that commands respect and promises social mobility when met with true devotion. Thus, the gender-based discrimination that has often led women to be viewed as socially lesser compared to men is exactly what was addressed by Durga's creation. In a society purely based on the Vedas, under equal circumstances, women would be in the same social class as men at all times. A particular example of Durga's influence on class can be seen through the Devi Mahatmyam. In it, two kings named Surhada and Samhadi were driven out by their people in a revolution. Strangely, the two kings felt worried about the people that had just driven them out. In search of answers, they approach Shri Sumedhas, who tells the kings that Durga is the reason that they feel a sort of remorse. Despite losing influence in class, the kings still cared about their people because of Durga. Even amidst a revolution, Durga instills a sense of moral obligation in the upper class towards the lower classes, allowing for rulers to be more humble and effective. The wealth of benevolent power is what Durga stands for. The basic tenet of a meritocracy is that work yields money. Yet, an analysis of Lakshmi provides more nuance to this notion. The first song about Lakshmi is the Sri Sukta in the Rig Veda. In it, the claim is made that praying to Lakshmi will make cows, horses, grain, gold, and other goods and services gravitate towards the devotee. These are all sources of money if sold or utilized, but these came from Lakshmi and not abjectly from work. Lakshmi then has to be a result of work. Despite his potentially dissolute allegiance in the Mahabharata, Karna had to work incredibly hard in establishing his loyalty in order to achieve Lakshmi. By this definition of Lakshmi, even those who won the birth lottery and were born into rich families do not necessarily possess her gift of auspiciousness. For instance, Duryodhana was born a prince, so he was incredibly rich. However, in the Mahabharata, his hatred towards the Pandavas led to his execution by Bhima. His noble riches gave him an obsession with legitimacy that serves as the catalyst for the Kurukshetra war. So, the fact that he did not work for his riches served as his undoing. The morality of wealth as an empirical economic concept can be explained through Lakshmi as well. As the embodiment of all such quantifiable wealth, she is said to be unpredictable. This nature of hers is analogous to the real-world fluctuations of supply and demand that govern stock prices and economic prosperity. Rather than facilitating an absolute meritocracy limited by uncontrollable factors such as ability and uniqueness, Lakshmi chooses to embrace the disorder which governs the universe. Perplexingly, this reality seems to be at odds with Lakshmi's established role as a result of work. Work is discrete, so how can its fruits be random? To rationalize these opposing concepts, an understanding of probability must be established. Let any given lifetime within the cycle of karma and moksha equal an n by n stochastic matrix, where n approaches infinity. A stochastic matrix is one where all of the individual rows within a column add up to 1. The columns of the matrix represent every discrete factor that influences the outcome of one's life, and the rows are probabilities that an event contributing to that factor will occur in an exact way. An assumption is made here that life's two possible outcomes are dharmic and adharmic. The goal of moksha is to be wholly dharmic, which is achieved when every element of the matrix is 1 over n. The rationale behind this goal is that the supreme consciousness is the equilibrium vector, or 1 by 1 by 1, ... And the way to achieve that without raising the stochastic matrix to too many powers, or lifetimes, is through a matrix with elements 1 over n. The initial stochastic matrix is where all human beings differ. Individual probabilities within the discrete factors that influence dharma are completely unique. Some people may be born rich and others might be born with nothing at all. Yet, as the stochastic matrix is raised to higher powers, every being converges to the equilibrium vector. The work that one puts in to satisfy dharma can speed up the process of acquiring eternal riches by simply changing the probabilities in the stochastic matrix. Goddess Saraswati is knowledge incarnate. Often, it is said that knowledge is needed in order to gain monetary wealth. However, this is an incorrect assertion, as Duryodhana and many others were born into wealthy dynasties as knowledgeless infants. Instead, Saraswati is necessary to achieve internal wealth. Her duty is to further the intellectual pursuits of beings and act as an agent of higher order diplomacy. If Durga is the advocate for the positive aspects of human nature, then Saraswati is the barrier preventing those who embrace her from the negative aspects of human nature. For example, the Vaksukta in the Rig Veda proclaims that Saraswati creates nations, so she is aware of all of the potential political squabbles within them and can afford devout leaders the knowledge to avoid them. Moreover, Saraswati prevented war from breaking out between the gods and the Gandharvas over an elixir by playing music to the Gandharvas, showing that she uses her wisdom to make other beings fulfilled. Having enough of these answers to feel satisfied and be able to contribute to society is what fulfillment actually is. Saraswati is able to directly facilitate this human aspiration, as shown by this slogan. Om Saraswati Mahabhaghe Vidye Kamalalochani Vishwarupe Vishwalakshmi Vidyam Dehi Namostute Jaya Jaya Devi Chara Chara Share Kucha Yuga Shobita Mukta Hare Vina Ranjita Pushtaka Haste Bhagavita Bharati Devi Namostute. Translated, may Goddess Saraswati, who is fair like the jasmine-colored moon and whose pure white garland is like frosty dewdrops, who is adorned in radiant white attire, on whose beautiful arm rests the Veena, and whose throne is a white lotus, who is surrounded and respected by the gods, protect me. May you fully remove my lethargy, sluggishness, and ignorance. Through the removal of lethargy, sluggishness, and ignorance, Saraswati ensures that her devotees know what they must do to fulfill their dharma, but nothing more. Once more, using dharma and a-dharma as substitutes for good and bad, Saraswati's role as a moral compass can also be seen. Her swan, Hamsa, is able to discern between these two concepts giving any action, so she can guide her devotees down the right path by granting them knowledge. In attempting to comprehend Saraswati, a devotee must first internalize the inherent value of knowledge, as it cannot be considered a form of wealth to be sought after otherwise. Jnana is the knowledge of the phenomenal world that allows a mortal being to perform daily societal tasks. Without this knowledge, there are less opportunities for a person in society, meaning that acquiring knowledge increases potential revenue, camaraderie, and fulfillment. The Upanishads preach that such knowledge has to be pursued in addition to knowledge of the Supreme Self, ensuring that a devotee does not lose sight of the necessities while in prayer. Both forms of knowledge are essential to attaining moksha, so they constitute just as much of the definition of wealth as does money. One of the perennial issues of society is the prevalence of poverty. 9.2% of the world lives in poverty, meaning that they do not have the money to support themselves. However, as previously mentioned, Hindu texts create an environment where the acquisition of necessities is completely separate from the purchase of lavish luxuries. This economic framework is reinforced by wealth's randomness and the agricultural lifestyle. While it is impractical to expect everyone to become a farmer, merchant, or nobleman in a globalized world, what can be done is increasing the minimum wage to create a clear split between wants and needs. Moreover, instead of targeting nearly impossible lotteries at the well-endowed masses, merit-based lotteries can be issued by governments in order to lessen the impact that birth status has on an individual's success and wealth. A merit-based lottery would consist of a board evaluating individuals' uses of the resources available to them. These solutions are built into Hindu texts, as can be seen by both the boons Krishna gave to Sudama and the harvest Vishwananda being predicated upon devotion. An issue that has occurred with regards to the distribution of knowledge is educational divides. The wealthiest 1% of school districts are spending far more money on resources to spread jnana than poor school districts. Moreover, the quality of education is directly based upon the income of the parents, which is a factor that children cannot control. Educational funding that is indirectly biased against underrepresented minorities is also prevalent at both the federal and local levels. An observation of Durga would spark the conclusion that children occupying a high social class should be educated on their privilege. The two evicted kings reconciled their lost power because of a genuine sense of care for those less fortunate than them. In the education sector, if the rich are taught from a developmental stage that they ought to care for the poor, resources will be handed down from one to the other. Moreover, if the concept of Lakshmi's randomness is put into practice within early childhood education, racial disparities and prejudice would become less prevalent, as the stochastic matrix of the supreme consciousness emphasizes the equality and opportunity of individuals with uniqueness and different initial amounts of monetary wealth. In a contemporary economic setting, wealth is often abstracted under figures like GDP and stock prices that are meaningless in a vacuum. Work done for society is seen simply as a means to an end, and much of society's unproductivity is caused by a fruitless search for what those ends actually are. The Maharishis of yore understood the complexities of human value. With a vast understanding of both material and social science, the seers were able to hypothesize different ways in which value manifests itself to the beings of the universe. Beings such as Sudama, Duryodhana, Karna, Sudhada, and Samhadi all came to appreciate the multifaceted character of wealth. Wealth means having other people to share life's experiences, as is evidenced by Durga and her emphasis on respect. Wealth means having the resources, usually in the form of money and always in the form of Lakshmi, to be able to survive on a biological level. Wealth means knowing a sufficient amount of information to chase one's dharma, but not so much as to go on a meaningless hunt for unproductive questions and unproductive answers. Wealth, most of all, means being closer to moksha and the supreme consciousness. Through acknowledging that these types of wealth are worth attaining on the most basic spiritual level, political leaders can allocate their resources less pragmatically and more effectively in attempting to solve issues such as poverty and educational divides. Hinduism teaches that life simply cannot be all about money.